you. So it's important actually for me to start by saying we're in the middle of two disputes, which we are running industrial action over at the same time. So it's quite a big thing. It's happening in 60 universities, and we're also now in the process of reballoting in branches that came close to that 50% threshold, and some that actually came a bit below but really want another crack at it, because one of the things I wanted to sort of reflect on in what I'm talking about here is the way that the current anti-trade union laws really stymie the voice of workers in the UK. We have some of the most restrictive anti-trade union laws in Europe, and that's, you know, not a badge of honour. And the Labour government has actually committed to repealing that legislation within its first 100 days. And I think those of us who have organised ballots since 2016 in trade unions know how much hard work it is to get a postal ballot. So again, another restriction on our ability to operate in a modern world where post is not the first way that many people expect to vote for something like this. We get an awful lot of our members asking us why they can't just do this online. What the challenges are of trying to get your workers' voices heard. Our disputes are incredibly important and pretty much cut across every single aspect of our members' lives in higher education. We have one dispute which is centred around the USS pension scheme, and those of you who remember the huge strike in the snow last year will remember that we went on strike and we successfully saved the defined benefits scheme, and we got to a point where we had agreement for how to go forwards that would allow us to end the strike action and work on addressing the issues of methodology that were underlying the dispute over pensions. And what's happened in the year since then is that our employers have essentially failed to support us in upholding the recommendations of that report. We've got to a point where our contributions have been raised, so we've gone from, it was 8%, it went up to 8.8%, and then it's gone up to 9.6% member contributions, which actually makes the pension unaffordable for lots of people, particularly those who are on lower wages and particularly those on casualised contracts. That in itself risks the scheme's long-term existence, really, and it's currently an open scheme. It's a very healthy scheme. So there's a lot of technical stuff that we're arguing about around methodology, and we have made some inroads with our employers, but we've got to this point where a year of trying to get them to support us on agreed ways forward that would have avoided the need for a strike over our pensions have stuttered and stuttered because of them dragging their feet, and we've been pushed to the point of having to go on strike over that. We're also on strike over casualisation, and it's really, I think, something that surprises a lot of people that in higher education insecure work is so rife. We have a huge number of people on fixed-term contracts, on hourly paid contracts, on zero-hour contracts, delivering an enormous amount of work in our universities in the context of students paying really high fees and our staff doing a huge amount of unpaid work. So again, that connects to another point of that second dispute, which is workload. And we have workload that is literally making people unwell in our sector, risking lives in the process. It connects also to pay inequality. We know that our women staff in higher education and staff who are people of colour are earning less than their male counterparts, but everyone overall has had their pay degraded because the other aspect of that, we're calling it the fourth rights dispute, is pay erosion over the last 10 years, and we've been essentially offered a pay cut. So that's 5 things right there that we're on strike over. We've been on strike for, this is our 7th working day on strike. Tomorrow is our 8th day. You said it ends tomorrow. The first wave of strike action ends tomorrow. But we are going back into work on action short of a strike from Thursday. So we're working to contract, and we're facing our employers in many places, including some concerns about this at Leeds University around deductions for action short of a strike, which is extremely punitive, and that's a choice that our employers are making. And I think that employers feel emboldened about taking this really hard stance against trade unions and actions that trade unions take in order to try to be heard, in order for their members to try to be heard. They're emboldened in that by the very seriously anti-union, anti-worker legislation that we've got. Our members didn't want to go on strike. we don't want to stop teaching, we don't want to stop supporting students, we don't want to stop the work of the university, but we've been left with no option. And that will probably sound familiar to many of you, because if you are at work in fields where you and your union has gone on strike, or if you're at work somewhere which doesn't recognise a trade union and you're finding it difficult to have your voice heard, all these fights are connected. I've spent the last week and a half travelling around our branches in the UK, visiting picket lines, speaking with members on the picket lines, speaking with students who've come to visit the picket lines, speaking at rallies, and speaking with other groups of workers who've come to support us. So, for example, today in Liverpool, there was a huge rally in the square. We were joined by workers from Unite, who work in university security, who were also on strike. We met with representatives from the PCS union, who are representing cleaners who are on strike in the city. We met Deliveroo strikers, who gave an extremely moving account of how difficult it is to take any form of action in that highly casualised gig economy. And it really came to a point where we were all there, standing together, and there was a banner that was talking about one struggle. So it's different types of work that we're all in, but we're all part of that one struggle. And one of the things that I find the most exciting about the Labour Party in its current incarnation, with its current leader, who is fully in support of our strike at the moment in higher education and has made it very clear, and he's been very vocal about that support, as have quite a number of Labour MPs. We've been joined locally, well, they're party political candidates at the moment, aren't they? But we've been joined locally by former MPs / current party political candidates on our picket lines, and it's just been so encouraging, because I think there was a time when that wouldn't have been a given. There was a time when even Labour MPs would have been nervous about showing up on a picket line. And I kind of want to think about why that is. Because what seems to have happened is that we've got to a position where people stop realising the power that ordinary people hold. They stop realising the power that workers hold. That when we withdraw our labour, that is us exercising our power because we need to be heard. And we're doing that in a stacked game. It is stacked against us. And what we need is a party in power, a government that actually understands and respects workers. I don't imagine if Labour get in on the 12th of December that all of our problems will immediately disappear. But I do know that that party is populated by people who are willing to listen, who want to listen, and want to build our economy on a fair deal for workers, on a kind of society where we're all respected for the jobs that we do, where we can all afford to live. And in affording to live, we can afford to do things like have fun and see each other and not work all the hours of the day. The Deliveroo strikers who were talking to us in Liverpool today talk about routinely having to do 12 hours or more on shifts, taking in jobs from 3 different apps to get enough money to just about scrape by, never seeing their children. So there are lots of issues in the Labour Manifesto that I think are just totally on point. I'm really pleased to see a whole swathe of stuff in there about education, and it's really evident to me, reading their education policy and plans for the National Education Service, that they understand education as something that everyone should have a right to at every point in their life. You shouldn't have to just be young to access education. It should be something that's open to you throughout your life, that it's something that shouldn't be prohibitive in terms of costs, that they understand the value of the National Health Service and valuing the workers of the National Health Service, that they understand the value that migrant workers bring to our economy and that they shouldn't be vilified, that they understand that we need investment in society for society to function. But for me, coming here tonight, I suppose my current experiences and the things that I feel will give us our power back and help people who are new to the trade union movement, people who are new to understanding that as workers we should not only have rights but we should have a voice. That is probably one of the most exciting bases for further change and further improvements that we can make to our society, because at the moment we are controlled by people in small numbers who earn huge amounts of money, who have disproportionate amounts of power, and we need to really democratise our workplaces, and I think that's what a Labour government will allow us to do.